I'll wait for that. Okay, I think it's started. Hi everyone. So I don't want to make you jealous, but I am now in the teaching lab myself, and it's really wonderful to be here. So hopefully soon we will see all of you here in person. And well, today's Meet and Eat Lunch lecture is by Roberto Rocco. And the title is Online Education During Corona, What to Do When Novelty Wears Off, which is really, I think, an urgent questions we might all have. So I'm looking forward to the discussion and also to the presentation by Roberto. So Roberto Rocco will share his experience on how to engage students in remote education when only online tools slowly start to lose their magic. And Roberto will discuss his considerations and ways of motivating students to actively participate in his course. Also, he will share his vision on how to apply the lessons learned from the past year in going back slowly, I would say, to campus. Now, who is Roberto? Is an associate professor of spatial planning and strategy at the Department of Urbanism of the Faculty of Architecture and the Built Environment. And Roberto presents himself as a scholar committed to understanding the relationships between society and the production and governance of the built environment. This means that he investigates how actors and institutions from the public sector, the private sector, and civic society interact in planning, designing, governing, and inhabiting the built environment, both formally and informally. So these basic but fundamental ideas explain much of his actions as an educator and a researcher. You can also find more information, of course, at the TU Delft site or a personal website. Now, let's turn to some practicalities. As you already see, this lecture will be recorded. So if you don't want to be on camera, you don't have to put it on. But of course, it's nice to see your faces, so you could turn it on. And Roberto has indicated that there will be a discussion time after the presentation. So you can post your questions and remarks during the presentation in the chat. And after the presentation, then Roberto will go into them. And so, Roberto, the floor is yours.
Roberto, sorry to interrupt, but you're muted.
I always do that. Yes. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, thanks, Anushka and Ted, for the introduction. As said, my name is Roberto Rocco. I'm an associate professor, and maybe I should also say that I'm in charge of methodology courses, both at the Department of Urbanism, at Bouwkunde, and at AMS, Amsterdam Metropolitan Solutions, in their MADE program. So what I'm going to present here today is more related to those courses in which I teach and discuss research methodology, actually, and a few other things. But so without further ado, I'm very conscious about the time. I am going to share my screen. Let's hope this will work.
Yes, we're able to see your screen.
Thank you. So, yeah, online education during Corona, and what do you do when the novelty wears off? I think we are all. I'm sick and tired of working at home. I want to go back, but we don't know how this is going to happen in the next few months. And I think it's a good opportunity for all of us to discuss what are our experiences with online education, and most importantly, what are we going to take away from this experience. So we had this forced online education, but we have discovered that a lot of it is interesting. We can continue to use it, but what are we going to take from this period? And I would like to start by saying that not everything in online education needs to be fun, as I'm sure you will agree with me. There is a lot of emphasis on, oh, it needs to be fun and engaging, but we are all living very difficult times. And I think it's good to acknowledge that these are difficult times, that we need to make an effort, and that we are in this together. And I'm saying this because I think we need to leave space for students to say that they are struggling and to tell us that they are struggling, and so that we can adjust our education and respond to students in a much better way. I think showing unrealistic optimism only makes it more difficult for those who are struggling. So from my own experience, I would say encouraging people, saying, okay, this is super difficult, but let's do it together. I'm here for you to help you, works much better, right? But the question is what to do when online education is not a novelty anymore, and when people are tired of Miro and Miro boards and Mentimeter and so on. Well, I don't have a magic solution, and I would love to discuss and hear from you what you think. But I think it's about variation, about interaction, which I have to admit we are not having so much right now, but we will in a few minutes. Engagement, a bit of fun, and clarity of objectives. Nothing beats content. I think we all agree that what's most important is the content that is interesting. But the question is, what will remain after the pandemic? I will talk very quickly about YouTube, Zoom, Miro, Mentimeter, and online games. And I'm going to start with by saying that I am taking the opportunity to stream some of my lectures, and they stay on YouTube as things that are there for the whole world to see. And I do that because I don't care so much if I make mistakes, or if I hesitate, or if I, walk back what I said. So I'm not so concerned about the lecture being perfect. But I do understand that some people are very concerned about the lecture having to be perfect. So I don't advise doing that. But if you didn't have this idea, maybe it's a good idea to have clips and your lectures online. Well, another thing that I often struggle with is that this is me during the a normal lecture, in which I can only see my own face, and I don't see the faces of people around me, and the students don't show their cameras, and it's very, very lonely, actually. And I have heard from someone a very good advice that I have adopted, and it has worked. I invite students to think, okay, I need at least 1/3 of the class to be visible to me, so I can have the feeling that I'm talking to someone, and I can see some of your non-verbal cues. It's very limited what we can see, but still we can see people nodding, for example. And that works because they don't feel they have to have their cameras on, but at the same time they want to help me. So a few of them always have their cameras on. So saying, 1/3 should have their cameras on helps. I think we have all used Miro. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but I still think it's a great tool that helps us, and the Post-its are the best invention ever. So for example, I have done this democracy SWOT, in which we have analyzed the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of democracy. You can see somebody wrote it's too slow, which is true, maybe. But I think this is one of the things that I would like to take from this pandemic, is using these interactive tools, and whenever possible. Mentimeter was also a great surprise to me by making things interactive and by asking funny questions. For example, who would you rather have lunch with? I was a little bit disappointed that they chose Elon Musk so much, but in any case, it's an interesting conversation starter. And I use this kind of conversation starters a lot in my classes. Another conversation started I used is, who are your heroes? So I'm looking for the heroes that students have, so that I can have a sense of their values, what they want to achieve, how they see the world, and it's a wonderful conversation starter. Another very interesting tool is this debating tool, and putting things a little bit in black and white and saying, well, do you agree or disagree with this statement? Let's debate. And as you can see, would you design a new capital for a dictator? People were a bit divided. A lot of people were in the middle, but actually many people would design. Well, one thing that I have done, when things started to wear off and the novelty started to we lost the novelty of all this, is that I came up with these booklets. So why these booklets helped me? In each of these booklets, I wrote down what my class would be. So I actually wrote down everything that I would say, but in a more structured way even. And I invented some exercises and some questions, and I have asked the students to please read the lecture in advance. So they would read the booklet in advance. And here, let me see if I can. I would like to stop. Wait a minute. I would like to stop to share, to show you something. Yes. So this is one booklet that I have done. It's about governance, and the name is Attention Please, because in multi-stakeholder environments, we need to shape the attention of the stakeholders if we want to achieve something. So the booklets are really easy reading. They have quotes and they have little jokes even. And this is my lecture written down and illustrated and so on. And with the references, obviously, then a small exercise, questions that they should answer concerning my lecture, and extra material in the form of generally in the form of newspaper clippings. So public participation in science and technology, why the failure to launch. So articles from newspapers discussing the issues that I tackled in my lecture, and so on. So the students would have very easy reading, so to speak, to talk about the issues of the. And I would tell them, you have to answer my questions, the questions in this booklet, and you have to upload them to Brightspace, but you have to do it in 1 hour. I don't want to spend more than 1 hour answering the questions, and you should do it using a Maro board with your colleagues. So that would improve the attendance and improve the communication during the class. And so all these booklets are structured in the same way, and they deal with different aspects of the course. Next, what I did was to try to design an online game by using this super funny story of a guy who once upon a time, one beautiful day, he decided to put a shark through the top of his house. And this is a real case. It exists in the UK. And what I did, I present a story. I tell the story of the shark, why the shark was put there, what was the justification. But I conceived an exercise in which negotiation over a set of societal questions that are relevant for planning and for planners. What are the rights of individuals in face of the rights of the community? Is public art a public good? Who decides what is public art and what is beautiful in the public domain? Who are the actors? How fair are decision-making processes in planning, etc., and so on. I used this website called playdecide.eu, which helps you design games. They kind of have a template, and you just have to fill in the information, and it prepares the cards for you. It prepares everything. So I have this game already in a face-to-face version, and I transferred it to Miro, and this is what the game looks like in the Miro board. And this is what the game looks like when it's being played. So there is a lot of interaction, but it is very long. So you have to have like a lot of time, at least 1 hour, to play the game in a meaningful way. And sometimes the rules of the rules of the game are relatively simple, but sometimes it's difficult to explain everything and to play the game. So they receive a game script in advance so that they can understand how the game is played, and they can play it in breakout rooms. So that's very nice, and they have to answer some crucial questions related to the game at the end. I do an integration of this game with Miro and with Mentimeter. So in real time on the screen, we have initial thoughts, for example, and discussions, and I also do things with keywords. And they have to, in the end, decide, all of them, they have to decide what to do with the shark. Yes, I wanted to present very quickly. So this is actually the end of my presentation, but I just wanted to reflect on the following. Online education doesn't have to be super fun and super engaging. It should be a little bit fun and should be a little bit engaging, but I'm very interested in discussing with you what are your ideas and experiences and tools for online education that I haven't thought about, and do you think we can use some of these things in our face-to-face or mixed lectures? I don't know what the future has in store for us, but anyway, this is, I think that's it. I will stop sharing, or maybe, yes.
All right, thank you. So are there any questions? So are there any questions in the chat already, Ted? Can you see them?
Yeah, one question that popped up by Andrea, who got 2 thumbs up actually, is that she says, the booklets look incredible. Could you maybe please share them, Roberto?
I can share them. I forgot to mention that because I used newspaper clippings, I have copyright issues. It's extremely expensive to buy the copyrights for for the booklets, for the articles, they cost around 300 euros per article. So I can't publish them publicly, but I can circulate them among us as educators. I think that constitutes fair use.
And regarding
I'm
the
really,
chat,
I'm really curious on how the students respond to those booklets.
Yeah, a good question. They were happy actually. I think they thought, oh, he's putting so much effort in this, because I did put a lot of effort in the design of the booklets. But most of all, I noticed that they read the booklets and that they answered the questions in advance, so that when I gave the lecture, they were more engaged than normally, I would say, because they already knew what I was going to say.
Because you start using the booklets when everything went online. You didn't do that in the previous course when everything was still on campus.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I didn't, because I have to say I didn't have time, and I think now I had to do it, so I made time, and I made the booklet. So I had readers, like we all do. I had articles I gave them, but I didn't have this structured booklet.
Really nice.
Yeah, it took quite it took me days to make one booklet, so it's a little bit. Yeah.
So things to take into consideration are the copyrights then, right? In creating them.
Absolutely. What I'm trying to do is to get a grant, and now to be able to pay the copyrights of the newspaper clippings. Otherwise, I would just publish the booklets without the articles.
Yeah. Thank you.
great. I see that Joannetta put her hand up, and after that, I think Andrea did. So maybe you can speak up in that order, please, Joannetta.
Yeah, well, thanks, Roberto, for the nice presentation. I like the topic, and I like the things that you showed. And the topic is really interesting because you're right. How should we continue after COVID, and what happens when all these nice tools become more known? And I like your suggestion that variation is very important. On the other hand, I was also thinking, for years and years and years, we've used PowerPoint in a lecture, and students never complained, or maybe they did, but we didn't hear it. So having all these new tools, you would think, okay, so they might become boring, but if they're good and if they work, and if you vary, I think you're right that they will continue to be really nice. And coincidentally, this morning I was in a meeting in a presentation about a tool called Xerte, and that reminds me of the booklets that you built. Because if you don't know it, it might be worthwhile to look into it, because it is a very nice way to make e-modules that you can integrate in your learning environment. But
What's
they will.
Your name? Sorry, Joannetta, what's the name of the tool?
In the chat, it's called Xerte, an X. And the only thing is that I'm not sure if we can use it in our institution already. A lot of vocational schools in the Netherlands are using it. And for example, Erasmus Medical University is using it. As soon as I get the recording of the presentation, I can share it somewhere. But I thought it was very interesting, and especially because it can make Brightspace give Brightspace a nice flow, and the flow is what we sometimes miss. And you can use your multimedia, like you made those nice PDFs, those booklets, but you can make them more interactive. And I think interactivity, that is what we need to make sure that we can continue to use in coming years. Well, that was what I wanted to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I will have a look at the Xertes.
Thank you, Joannetta. I see that Andrea put her hand up after that, and I see there's another hand by Wiebe, but maybe first Andrea.
Hi, thanks for the really nice talk, and the booklets are so impressive. Maybe, yeah, it's possible just to share one where you've taken the sensitive copyrighted material out, just so that it, yeah, just to circulate, because I think those look fantastic. And I'm not surprised to hear that it took a really long time to make them, because it looks like it did. I have just a general question about, like, maybe, and I'm sure other people can weigh in on this too, but one of the difficulties I think I have with figuring out what to include in lectures, especially in this new context, is this worry that, like, well, if you put too much, sort of, if you give them too much ahead of time, students, I mean, in the sense of like the content that you're going to talk about in the lecture, then students feel like, well, what's the point of going to lecture if I already have access to the content, if I've already done the reading and we're just going over the reading in the lecture. Then what you've said is that actually you've seen, in this case at least, that students getting the kind of the booklet ahead of time and the information and the topics and ideas already, that actually increased the participation that you saw.
Yeah.
And so does this seem like that's new to online teaching at this moment, or have I kind of been making the wrong assumption from the beginning, I guess? And then maybe also, how do we negotiate that sort of going into a situation where we might be online and in person at the same time?
I'm sure others will weigh in as well, but my tool to increase participation during the class was the promise of interaction. Students, at least in Balkende, are very sad because they cannot interact with each other. And I told them, okay, if you read the booklet and answer, you have to, so first of all, I said, you have to answer the questions in a group using breakout rooms. So you are going to interact with your friends then, and it needs to be very short. But when we get to the class, I'm going to present again, and I'm going to discuss my ideas, and we are going to interact with each other and discuss. So that promise, I think, was important for them to know that I would make the class in a way that they would be able to talk to their friends. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think there are always a few who think like that. So what's the point of going to the lecture if I have the lecture already here? We know we have some pragmatists among our students. But I think that they are the minority. I think, okay. Yeah. I don't know if others have opinions about that.
I'd just like to add to that that we use a lot of exercises during our lectures using breakout rooms, just short exercises, sometimes a little bit longer exercises, depending on the length of the lecture. And it works. Students really appreciate the fact that the lecture is only maybe 10 minutes or so max. That's actually explaining something which they could have found out themselves anyway. And then it's really applying in short exercises, in discussion groups, whatever. But it's what Roberto says, it's the interaction that makes it appealing. So yeah. Don't just give a PowerPoint presentation, but make sure there are a lot of interactive exercises. And again, mix them, because if you've used Miro a number of times, then the novelty wears off. So you have to use something else the next time.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I do agree. It's all about what is your added value as a lecturer, and it's not only giving the students content, but also interacting, giving them feedback, maybe explaining difficult topics they don't understand, making new connections, those kinds of things. Yeah, and I also wanted to tell about Xerta. I don't think we have that at TU Delft right now, but I think it's best to send an email to educationaltooling@tudelft.nl. I will also put it in the chat. That's the email address you can contact if you need new tools for your education, because I think it's quite hard. You need to install it yourself. So would you just maybe contact Educational Tooling, and then they can help you if you need something like this.
Thank you, people. Great addition. I saw that next up with their hand up was Anushka.
Yeah, I was wondering how many students did you have in your course? And also, because you're talking a lot about interaction of students amongst them, which is, I think, really nice. But did you, as a lecturer, get the feeling that you managed to connect with your students in this way?
Oh, that's such a good question, because no, I had the feeling that I didn't connect enough and I didn't know them. So it was my courses are courses, right? They are not studio. I have also studios, but they are different because then you have to really talk to the students. But in this case, I had 90 people, or sometimes 100 people in the classroom, and I only saw a few of them. Like I'm now only seeing a few of you, and only a very few spoke publicly. They are very resistant to speaking publicly, even on Zoom or Teams. I found that the chat helps those who are a little bit like they don't want to speak, but they can write. I had a very interesting case in which I was somebody called my attention to the fact that one of the students was he had a stutter, and he felt horrible when I asked him to speak. So from that moment on, I never asked students to speak. I just asked them to volunteer to speak. So I didn't say, now you are going to say something, like sometimes I used to do. But for me, that still remains the main challenge, is how to connect with this large number of people and how to make them more active. And also, of course, we know that for a few of them, I don't know if the majority, I don't think the majority, but for a few of them, they will keep their cameras closed and they will be half paying attention. So how to tackle that? Apart from making the lecture interesting, but I don't have a good answer yet.
Thanks.
So how do you interact with 100 people? So sorry, I'm speaking too much, but I think the breakout rooms do help a lot.
Yeah, and interact, maybe polling questions and the things that you showed, I think.
Sure.
Yes, another thing mentioned in the chat by Marie van den Berg is that I think interaction in smaller groups is a good way to involve them in a discussion. So that goes hand in hand with the breakout rooms and the polling, stuff like that, to get the conversation going, I think. But maybe I'm filling in for Mary and she wants to explain herself, but please don't feel obliged, of course.
As you said, that I think it works well. Yeah, I just had a studio of 16 students, so then I think it's easier to let them speak up and to make them feel comfortable, because we had a whole quarter to get to know each other, and then they could feel comfortable speaking up. But I think with 100 students, I think it really works to maybe use some statements and then put them in a breakout room and let them discuss that.
Yeah,
and let them just I don't know, take ownership and responsibility to make that discussion then work in the breakout room.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. But now we are all going back. Hopefully, I have to knock on wood because we never know with this virus. But we are getting the vaccine, and we are probably going back to campus. And I would love to continue to use some of these tools. And I think maybe we could start thinking about mixed education, in which a small part could be online. But I don't know. It's just I'm thinking aloud.
Yeah, why not?
Mm-hmm.
But the mixed education also relates to the blended education, right? Doesn't always have to be hybrid or at the same time the group at home and on campus, but even the blended ways of looking at your education helps.
Exactly, and I think the concept of flipped classroom, in which the content is given first and then the classroom is the interaction, is still quite valid. So we could use the online things for the flipped classroom. So any more?
Yeah, I see that in the chat, Joannetta shared something about the fishbowl method, but it's not clear to me whether that relates to interacting in the small groups or something that she thinks that's valuable to take back into consideration, or to take into consideration when going back to campus. But maybe she can elaborate on that.
Actually, maybe both, in the sense that in the link that I added, it says 5 students, but you can use it in larger settings as well, to have a group of students discuss something, and the other students are instructed to take notes and observe, and that can be done both online and in a live session. And as what Gita says, I think everything in the coming time will be blended, in a sense that it's synchronous and asynchronous, so online and hopefully soon face-to-face. And the trick, of course, is to find the best mix of this, and it will be either flipped or whatever we want to call it. I think blended is the best way to call it, because it blends everything and you want to make the best use of everything. And yeah, the fishbowl is just one method that can help to make it interactive.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point you make, that maybe we should take really time, say 1 or 2 years, maybe 2 years, to think through what we've been through now, because now we are only reacting and thinking of ad hoc solutions. So how can we distill a vision about our teaching, right? About what we learned, and then maybe we should even experiment or try things out and then really study what works and what doesn't work, and then we can take a decision on how to proceed. That's I think very useful.
Yeah, there was something mentioned in the chat as well, which goes a little bit on this meta level. It's a comment by Maurits Ertsen, and he wrote, "I would think that many of these issues touched upon are not terribly specific for online teaching. One-way lecturing has never been effective. Making students prepare has never been easy. Using contact time for interaction is the way to go anyway. I would think that the online environment mainly stresses these challenges and offered a few additional other ways to develop interaction." Yeah, I think this touches really well on upon what you just mentioned, Anushka, that it's a process we're going through and we're not done with learning about that yet, I think. But maybe, I don't know whether Maurits feels comfortable in elaborating a little bit more on that, maybe. That could be insightful.
Well, I'm not sure if it's going to be insightful, but I can definitely say something about it. Now, what intrigued me and annoyed me at the same time, let's do this through an anecdote. I was teaching something in October, I think. No, September last year, for a minor program, and I was teaching in the 4th week, and I was the first one, so totally online. I was the first one who actually asked the student a question, which was kind of interesting. Even more interesting that the engineer asked students questions and not the humanities people. But anyway, I found it fascinating. And at the same time, I found it fascinating that apparently we're still on that level, right? Interacting with students is the way to go. No, really, Sherlock? It's fascinating. And I do appreciate all these discussions because they're important. But at the same time, it's quite often about the tools, which are very, very important. Don't get me wrong on that. Tools are the way that we do stuff. But at the same time, I taught my courses simply by pushing people into breakout rooms instead of kicking them through the lecture hall. And the benefit actually was that they couldn't choose. I just pushed the button and they were in a group. So I find that really funny. But so the tools are important, but the principle is the same. And that's what I think is occasionally missing in not necessarily the session, but in general. We focus terribly on the tools and not on the simple principle that teachers should not say that much. And I'm going to shut up because I shouldn't say that much.
You all kept us speechless.
Well, then I'm going to say one more thing. My answer to making students prepare has never been easy. Is to not ask them to prepare for lectures. I never ask them to prepare for lectures or sessions. I do sessions in this, and then I want them to do something with that session. And what I find beneficial there is that all the students are the same. So because if I ask students to prepare and some of them don't, then you could say, well, it's their loss. You could also say, but it means that you cannot do the stuff you want to do or whatever. So I just don't anticipate that they prepare. I anticipate that they bring what they know to class and then they elaborate on it afterwards. I find that a very useful approach.
Yeah, so I appreciate what you're saying. Obviously, I was stating the obvious the whole time, I have to admit. But I disagree a little bit with, well, I understand your position, but I do ask my students to do a little bit of preparation. And indeed, if they don't, it is their loss. But also the lecture goes on in the same way. I mean, if they didn't prepare, they are still able to follow it. In my case, I thought it was important to prepare because it increased the commitment of the students to the course, and it did help with the interaction. The interaction became much more meaningful. The things that I'm teaching, maybe I was not so clear about it, they are connected to ethics and democracy and governance. So it demands a certain position from the student that I thought, and I think I was proven it worked for me. It helped a little bit if they thought about it before and that they formed a position, even if they didn't know everything. Am I against or for something? So yeah.
That sounds good. Before we continue the discussion with everybody who wants to stay a little longer, I think people have to leave because, yeah, teaching and so on.
Yes.
So I would like to thank you, Roberto, again very, very much for your very nice presentation, and also for the audience and for the interaction and the teaching academy facilitation team to prepare everything. So I hope to see you soon, and already put in your agenda the education day on the 4th of November, where we can all discuss again. And of course before that, but it would be nice to see you all. So if you have to leave, leave. If you want to stay, stay. Let's see.